Chapter 530. Swoosh. A sword came from the horizon. A completely silver-white dragon abyss sword flew over from afar. It was the other half of the Long Yuan sword. It flew over at an extremely fast speed and then merged with the huge black sword in Chu Liyue's hand. In the middle of the dark and restrained sword body, a dazzling silver light slowly appeared. The aura of the Long Yuan sword also gradually became stronger. Chu Liyue was shocked. Previously, she thought that the Long Yuan sword was already strong enough. She did not expect that it was only half of its power. Now that the two Long Yuan swords had officially merged, the power was astonishing. A subtle connection gradually formed in her heart. It was the Long Yuan sword. As time passed, this feeling became stronger and stronger, and the Long Yuan sword in her hand also started to become lighter and lighter. Until a certain moment, the two swords finally completely merged into one. The sword body shone brightly. In the next moment, on the Long Yuan sword, one side burned with flames and the other side flowed. Chu Liyue released her hands. The Long Yuan sword quietly floated in front of her. Between heaven and earth, one person and one sword. They stood opposite each other. Chu Liyue shouted, "Long Yuan sword, condense!" In a moment, the huge sword body dissipated. A normal-sized heavy sword appeared in front of her. Chu Liyue held the sword in her hand again with reverence. This sword was completely black, simple and grand. Only in the middle, there was an extremely thin silver groove. At this moment, the Long Yuan sword had already recognized its owner. It was also very easy for her to use. She did not need to use all her strength to forcefully wield it like before. She held the sword hilt and casually waved it. A black spatial crack appeared silently. It was actually so sharp. Chu Liyue's eyes instantly lit up. The Long Yuan sword was indeed a divine weapon. The sharpness of this heavy sword was really the most she had ever seen. She saw Taizu from the corner of her eye and could not help but excitedly say, "Taizu, how did you forge this Long Yuan sword back then? It's really extremely powerful." Suddenly, her voice paused and she slowly turned her head. Taizu was also looking at her with a face of confusion. The two of them looked at each other and fell into silence. After a while, Chu Liyue asked tentatively, "Why are you here?" Taizu, you're still here?" Shengguan Jing looked at his illusion. After the Long Yuan sword officially recognized him as its master, his figure had indeed become much more illusory. At that time, he thought that he would immediately disappear from this world. In fact, this should be the case. The reason why he could be stored in the Dragon Abyss sword was because the Dragon Abyss sword originally belonged to him. However, after the Long Yuan sword chose a new owner, logically speaking, he should not be able to continue existing. But now, not only was he fine, he even seemed to have become more solid. In the awkward silence, Shengguan Jing coughed and finally opened his mouth slowly. It seems to be a little different from what I expected. It seems that after 1,000 years, some things have changed. Chu Liyue was speechless. Suddenly, he felt that his emotions just now were a waste. However, this thought only flashed through his mind. Taizu was still around, so she was naturally pleasantly surprised and happy. Although it was only a remnant consciousness, it was still very precious to her. "Taizu, then you will still be stored in the Long Yuan sword in the future, right?" Chu Liyue could not help but ask. Shengguan Jing's mood immediately improved when he saw her expectant look. This girl was very much to his liking. This was also very good. Not bad. When Chu Liyue heard the affirmative answer, the corners of her mouth curled up into a brilliant smile. Now, she really wanted to thank Shengguan Wan and Jianghu. If not for them holding this Wanzheng competition for no reason, how would she have the chance to meet Taizu? Take out the Long Yuan sword? She looked around. The heavenly Tao power in this small kiliacosm had already been absorbed into the Long Yuan sword. And now, the Long Yuan sword was already in her hands. This place could no longer be considered a divine realm. "Taizu, shall we go?" Chu Liyue asked. Shengguan Jing nodded and sighed softly. Although these two halves have already fused, without the power of the heavenly Tao, it will only be a ruin from now on. Chu Luo asked hesitantly, if we leave now, won't you regret it? Sheng Guanjing shook his head. It was my mistake that caused this place to exist. After 1,000 years, I've let go of all my unwillingness. He was a little emotional, but he was not sad. The Long Yuan sword has already recognized you as its new master. Being able to reappear in the world can be considered as making up for the last regret in my heart. Chu Luo nodded. At the same time, she was very moved. Everything here actually represented the glory and loss that the great ancestor once had. Now that he could let it go so easily, not everyone had such a state of mind. As expected of the existence who single-handedly created the entire Tianling dynasty. Just as Chu Luo was about to leave, a wave of fluctuations suddenly came from afar. Something was flying towards them. Chu Luo looked over and was slightly stunned. What is that? Her voice stopped abruptly, and a trace of shock gradually climbed to the corners of her eyes. That seems to be half a corpse. And it looks very familiar. Chu Luo pointed at the lustrous corpse that was flying towards her, her fingers trembling slightly. Taizu, that's the remaining half of the great phoenix dragon's corpse? Sheng Guanjing blinked. It seems to be. It should be because you put away the Long Yuan sword. It lost its suppression and sensed the aura of the other half of the corpse, so it came over by itself. The corner of Chu Luo's mouth twitched slightly. It seems to be. What do you mean it seems to be? The first half was placed in her heavenly square cauldron. There was no doubt about it. Also, what was the meaning of coming over by itself? Chu Luo tried to make her voice sound calmer. You didn't tell me before that the remaining half of the corpse was over there, Didn't I tell you? Taizu asked and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. Looks like I'm really old. Chu Luo. After all, he was her ancestor. What else could she say? Chu Luo threw out the heavenly square cauldron in resignation. Sheng Guanjing glanced at her expression and felt a little guilty. He chuckled. Since we're leaving, you can take away everything in the hall. He was referring to the shocking number of treasures. Without waiting for Chu Luo to say anything, he waved his sleeve, and a huge crack appeared in the sinkhole. Then, countless treasures surged up. Girl, quick. The hilt of the Long Yuan sword is a storage space, and it can store all of these. Sheng Guanjing urged. Chu Luo. You even specially refined Qingquan sword hilt back then? Sheng Guanjing nodded and urged her. Chu Luo had no choice but to obediently put those things into the hilt of the Long Yuan sword. At this moment, the remaining half of the corpse had already arrived in front of the heavenly square cauldron. Sheng Guanjing suddenly said, Oh, right. Once the great phoenix dragon's corpse is gathered, the great phoenix dragon race will immediately sense it. You should know this, right? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 5:31. Chu Luo was dumbfounded. What? When Sheng Guanjing saw her reaction, he immediately rubbed his nose guiltily. That is, the great phoenix dragon clan is an ancient divine beast. If they sense the aura of this corpse, they will chase after it no matter how far away they are. Chu Luo had an ominous premonition. They won't think that I did it, right? Of course. This great phoenix dragon has been dead for more than 1,000 years. They can find out about this. However, Sheng Guanjing paused and his voice was a little weak. However, it did die under the Long Yuan sword back then. Now, you are the owner of the Long Yuan sword. Chu Luo's eyebrows twitched violently. In other words, this great phoenix dragon's corpse would most likely bring her great trouble. If it was ordinary trouble, it would be fine, but it was the great phoenix dragon clan. Once they came looking for her, wouldn't she have to take responsibility for this? At that time, she would only have a dead end. Without another word, Chu Luo immediately turned around and raised her hand to take back the heavenly square cauldron. She didn't want the remaining half, all right. However, at this moment, the half of the corpse in the heavenly square cauldron seemed to have sensed the aura of the other half and began to float outside. Chu Liwei hurriedly suppressed it with the transparent karmic fire. Back then, I split the long yuan sword into two and it took me a lot of effort to separate and nail the corpse. But now that they are so close, it's useless. Shangguan Jing met Chu Liue's resentful eyes and tactfully retracted the remaining half of his sentence. Chu Liue took a deep breath and simply put the corpse into the heavenly square cauldron. The two halves of the corpse were reconnected. The transparent karmic fire instantly covered it. Only then did the fluctuation calm down. The legendary three-eyed eagle also flew back. A voice sounded in Chu Liue's heart. The heavenly square cauldron is not an ordinary item. As long as there are no accidents, it can completely conceal the aura of the great phoenix dragon's corpse. Even if they sense the commotion just now, they might not be able to find you. Only then did Chu Liue calm down. Since it had already happened, he might as well accept it. Moreover, with this complete corpse, he might be able to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body. Thinking of this, Chu Liue took a deep breath and put away the heavenly square cauldron. She looked at Taizu faintly. Great ancestor, you haven't forgotten anything else, have you? Shangguan Jing had dominated the world all his life, and thousands of people bowed to him. He had never thought that he would be so embarrassed and guilty in front of a teenage girl. He coughed heavily. No more, no more. That's right, I'll help you store the things on the other side into the long yuan sword. These will all be yours in the future. You can spend it however you want. Is that okay? Chu Liue looked at Taizu's careful expression and finally couldn't help but laugh. Before this, she had never thought that Taizu, who only existed in legends and books, would actually be so clumsy and sincere to make her happy. Originally, she wasn't really angry in her heart. Now that she saw Taizu's reaction, her heart softened even more. Seeing Chu Liue smile, Shangguan Jing finally heaved a sigh of relief. For some reason, this girl seemed to be born to suppress him. He liked her very much at first sight. When he saw that she was a little unhappy, he also felt sad. Now that he saw her eyebrows relax, he felt at ease. Chu Liue suddenly thought of something and asked, "By the way, Taizu, I'll take this long yuan sword away. After I leave, what will your descendants do if they find out?" If Shangguan Wan knew about this, she would probably want to cut her into pieces. Now that her identity had yet to be revealed, it would be inappropriate for her to be exposed. Shangguan Jing thought for a moment and knew Chu Liue's concerns. He said, "If you don't want anyone to know, you can leave a sword aura here." Although the heavenly Tao in this minor kiliacosm had already dissipated, it could still last for a few years. Ordinary people wouldn't notice this change. Chu Liue smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. "Thank you, Taizu." As she spoke, she willed and two sword auras flew out. They flew in two directions. Soon, two gigantic dragon abyss swords appeared in the chaotic world. At a glance, there was really no difference from before. Only she and Taizu knew the secret of this minor kiliacosm. Even if Shangguan Wan and the others came in and saw this scene, they wouldn't have any doubts. Shangguan Jing looked at her in a daze. Chu Liue touched her face. "Taizu, is there something wrong with me?" Shangguan Jing came back to his senses and shook his head. "Nothing." That smile just now, her eyes and brows did look a little familiar. Xuanji Square. After Ning Jiaojiao was eliminated, there were only 5 names left on the black jade board. It was already evening, but there were still many people waiting in the square. Ning Jiaojiao has already appeared today. There shouldn't be anyone else eliminated, right? Most likely. However, this competition is about to end. Let's wait a little longer. They had waited for a few days. How could they miss this last bit of time? Suddenly, a figure rushed out of the teleportation array. She fell to the ground in a sorry state. The crowd was in an uproar. Most people didn't have much hope and thought that someone might be eliminated tomorrow. They didn't expect someone to come out at this time. Who is that? It's another woman. A woman? Is it Chu Liue? Many people rushed to look at the woman on the ground. Her situation was actually worse than Ning Jiaojiao's. Her body was covered in wounds, and there was a clear bloody hole on her back. It was obviously pierced through by a sword. She looked like she was on the verge of death, as if she would stop breathing at any time. At this moment, a name slowly disappeared from the black jade board. It's Yang Qin. That woman is Yang Qin. The others from Purple Shao Sword Sect have already been eliminated. Only this person from outside Heaven's Canopy is left. I didn't expect her to make it to the 5th place. Tiske, I wonder who was so ruthless? If the wound was a little more to the side, it would have been her heart. It's a competition after all, everyone was discussing. Elder Duanmu Chun went forward to check on Yang Qin. Seeing that she was indeed in a semi-conscious state, he sent people to carry her away. Yang Qin could hear the voices around her, but she couldn't open her eyes. Her throat was dry and painful, and she couldn't say a word. Long Yuansu, that person, someone else is coming out. Someone in the crowd suddenly exclaimed. 2 figures were sent out one after the other. The entire square was in an uproar. 2 people were eliminated at once. Yuan Jinghong put down her arms in shock. Those 2 are both men. This meant that there were only 2 people left in the Tianling God realm. Chu Luiwei was one of them. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 5:32. She was only 1 step away from 1st place. Previously, he thought that Jian Fengqi was crazy to bet on Chu Luiwei. Who would have thought that the tables would turn in the blink of an eye? Amidst the commotion, only the group of people at the gambling table fell into dead silence. These people were eliminated one after another, and they didn't even have time to react. However, right after that, there was another fluctuation from the teleportation array. Everyone in the square quietened down instantly and looked over. The winner was about to be revealed. Under countless gazes, a figure broke out. It was a young man. The afterglow shone on his soft, short, golden hair, reflecting a faint glow. Compared to the previous few people, his condition was much better. Other than some scattered bloodstains on his clothes, he didn't seem to be injured. He stood there and surveyed his surroundings. His cold and fair face was filled with indifference. His name slowly disappeared from the black jade board. The huge square was dead silent. Chang Wanzhou. That's Chang Wanzhou. It was unknown who was the first to break the dead silence. Like a spark falling into a pot of oil, it instantly ignited a huge fire. The whole square was in an uproar. Chang Wanzhou is second. Chu Luiwei is the only one left in the Tianling God realm. She's first. She's actually first? How is this possible? Stage 3 warrior? Is she really just a Stage 3 warrior? Faced with this sudden result, the crowd didn't have time to think about why these people were eliminated one after another at the last minute. There was only one thought left in their minds. As the lowest level participant among the participants, Chu Luiwei actually got 1st place in the Wanzhong competition. Yuan Jinghong was dumbfounded as he stiffly turned to look at Jian Fengqi. The girl? She's really first? Jian Fengqi closed his fan and hit him with a look of disdain. Don't show such a useless expression. I won't be friends with such an ignorant person. Yuan Jinghong swallowed his saliva with difficulty. But he was the young master of the Yuan family and had seen the world. Under normal circumstances, he would have reacted this way. But, Chu Luiwei got 1st place. Jian Fengqi, do you know what this means? Yuan Jinghong was so agitated that he wanted to grab Jian Fengqi's shoulder. Jian Fengqi moved his feet and easily dodged it. Hey, stay away from me. This was simply too embarrassing. He snorted softly, tidied up his sleeves, and smiled leisurely. Of course, I know what this means. Do you think I've wasted my money? Yuan Jinghong's eyes were dull for a moment. Previously, he only cared about how impressive it was for Chu Luiwei to come in first, so he actually forgot about this matter. After holding it in for a while, he finally spat out 2 words fiercely. I'm afraid that Jian Fengqi is really going to be rich this time. The odds of Chu Luiwei getting 1st place were so high. Plus, he bet so much money. Jian Fengqi glanced at him casually. Why are you so agitated? Didn't you bet with me too? Yuan Jinghong held his head in pain. I'm regretting that I only bet so little. You beast! Why didn't you persuade me to bet the money for my wife too? He felt like countless white crystal coins were flowing in front of his eyes, and he could only watch helplessly. Jian Fengqi sneered and ignored him. He turned to look at the stunned crowd in the casino. Because the shock was too great, they didn't seem to be able to react. Oh, not exactly. Those whose faces were pale and their bodies were trembling should have figured it out by now. Knock knock. Jian Fengqi knocked on the table. I'll be waiting for you at Chun Feng restaurant. Oh, by the way, don't forget to bring my money. After saying that, he glanced at the man who was talking about him behind his back. Sensing Jian Fengqi's gaze, the man's legs went soft and he collapsed to the ground. He had almost thrown all his money into the casino. This time, it could be said that he had lost everything. Jian Fengqi laughed. Tisk, when fortune comes, it's really hard to stop it. It seems that I won't lose more than half of my fortune, but will make a lot of money instead? How am I going to spend all this money? What a headache. The man's face turned red, but he couldn't say a word. Jian Fengqi turned to leave, but he stopped and said, Oh, by the way, I'm much richer than you think, so that's not even half of my fortune. And after this, it's even less. The man's eyes rolled back and he fainted from anger. Jian Fengqi sneered. You really can't take a beating. Everyone in the casino seemed to be mute, but their faces turned even uglier. Jian Fengqi's words were really asking for a beating, but with his status and strength, who would dare to provoke him? Not to mention now, they didn't even have the strength to feel sorry for their wallets. Jian Fengqi turned and walked towards the center of the square. He wasn't worried that these people would go back on their words. After so many years in West Hill, no one had ever dared to go back on their words in front of him. Yuan Jinghong saw this and quickly asked, Where are you going? Jian Fengqi didn't even turn his head. That girl helped me win so much money, I have to go and thank her. He didn't care about the Wanzheng competition at first, but now, it was a different story. Chu Liyue's status had risen by at least 2 levels. Although Yuan Jinghong was still suffering from angina, she was also very curious about Chu Liyue and immediately followed him. The two of them were in a relatively remote location, but after walking for a distance, they quickly had a clear view of the entire square. Jian Fengqi looked at the octagonal teleportation array and narrowed his eyes. He wasn't the only one. Every pair of eyes in the square was looking over there at this moment. The noise gradually died down. Everyone stopped talking at the same time and waited for Chu Liyue to come out. Chang Wanzhou glanced at the 2 people lying on the ground not far away. They seemed to be seriously injured and had fainted. The black cavalry walked up and carried the 2 of them down. When Chang Wanzhou saw their faces, his brows furrowed imperceptibly. He hadn't seen these 2 people in the Tianling God realm before. They should be people who went to the other half of the space. According to what the surrounding people said just now, these 2 people came out not long before him. That was when Chu Liyue swung the Long Yuan sword. In that case, Chu Liyue's move not only shook their world, but also the other side? At this moment, a familiar wave came from the teleportation array. An exquisite and slender woman's figure appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 5:33. Her red clothes fluttered in the wind, and her black hair was tied up simply. There was a faint smile on her face without any makeup, and she was devastatingly beautiful. If it wasn't Chu Liyue, who else could it be? The warm afterglow fell on her body, her face, and her eyes were bright and resplendent. For a moment, many people were stunned. Who would have thought that such a slender and weak-looking woman would actually win first place in the Wanzheng competition? As soon as Chu Liyue came out, she felt all kinds of gazes looking at her from all directions. She blinked her eyes and calmly glanced around. Only then did she realize what was going on. It seems like it's because I'm the last one to come out? But there doesn't seem to be such a big reaction, right? Chang Wanzhou walked over. When Chu Liyue saw him, the corners of her lips curled up subconsciously. You didn't, I was late. Chang Wanzhou spoke stiffly, but his expression was a little tense. Chu Luiwei was stunned for a moment before she understood what he meant. Is he blaming himself for finding her too late? You're not late. Chu Luiwei shook her head firmly. The Tianling God realm was so big. Chang Wanzhou must have spent a lot of effort to find her. Moreover, although she had stayed in the crater for a long time, she actually knew that Chang Wanzhou had been waiting for her outside. Even until the end, he had been fighting for her. Chu Luiwei felt that Chang Wanzhou had done enough. She didn't expect him to think that he was too late. Thank you, little Zhou. Chu Luiwei smiled at him and said softly. Chang Wanzhou suddenly trembled, and a look of shock flashed across his eyes. He looked at Chu Luiwei as if he wanted to see through her, but also as if he was looking at someone else through her. Chu Luiwei was a little surprised. What's wrong? You don't like me calling you that? Chang Wanzhou clenched his fists tightly. That's what she calls me too. Chu Luiwei immediately guessed who he was talking about. There was only one person who could make him care so much. If you really mind, I won't call you that in the future. After this incident, Chu Luiwei felt that his relationship with Chang Wanzhou had become closer, so he thought of calling him that. However, she was not in the mood to fight for anything, especially with a person who might not even be alive. Chang Wanzhou didn't say anything for a while. Finally, he shook his head. It's fine. She won't mind. If she didn't mind, then he wouldn't mind either. Chu Luiwei knew exactly what he was thinking. Okay, then I'll call you Xiaozhou from now on. You can also call me by my name. Chang Wanzhou nodded hesitantly, but didn't say anything. Chu Luiwei did not force him. After a long time, this child would naturally come around. Chu Luiwei. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind him. Chu Luiwei turned around. Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu Chun looked at her with a complicated expression. In the end, he gave her a thumbs up. Congratulations. Much more powerful than we imagined. You deserve to be number one. Chu Luiwei also laughed. Elder Duanmu, you flatter me. Luyu was just a little lucky. Elder Duanmu Chun shook his head and stroked his beard. You don't have to be too humble. So many people have been defeated by you. That's enough to explain the problem. At first, they didn't dare to believe it, but the truth was right in front of them. They had no choice but to believe it. This Chu Luiwei indeed had endless potential. Who knows what kind of underhanded methods she used? Elder Qiushi, who was at the side, suddenly said in a strange tone. Chu Luiwei's smile didn't change. She pretended not to hear it. Anyway, the results were out. She was already the biggest winner. No matter what others said, it was useless. Why should she care? Elder Duanmu Chun looked at Elder Qiushi disapprovingly. Even if he didn't like Chu Luiwei, he shouldn't have said that in front of so many people. It was really too petty. However, when he saw Chu Luiwei's nonchalant expression, Elder Qiushi was even angrier. He couldn't help but raise his voice. Chu Luiwei, didn't you hear what I said? This voice attracted many people's attention. The surroundings fell silent for a moment. Countless pairs of eyes moved back and forth between Chu Luiwei and Elder Qiushi. Elder Qiushi. Was he planning to find trouble with Chu Luiwei? Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. Elder Qiushi, the competition is over. What do you want me to say? Elder Qiushi frowned. Naturally, I want you to talk about how you got first place. You're the one with the lowest cultivation level among the contestants. If you didn't use any tricks, how could you win against so many people and become first place? Actually, this was what many people wanted to know. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. I don't understand what Elder Qiushi is saying. I'm indeed the one with the lowest cultivation level here, but I'm not the weakest here. I believe you were already very clear about this during the qualifiers, weren't you? Elder Qiushi's expression changed. Chu Luiwei had beaten Zhao Yunji until she couldn't retaliate. As a result, Zhao Yunji's injuries hadn't healed yet. The strength that Chu Luiwei displayed in this competition was indeed not weak. Moreover, I don't know why the others were eliminated before me. Don't tell me you want me to ask them one by one how they were inferior to me? That is really difficult for me. Chu Luiwei said with a troubled expression. This time, Elder Qiushi wasn't the only one with an ugly expression. What nonsense are you talking about? I'm asking you to explain your situation clearly. What does it have to do with others? Elder Qiushi hurriedly reprimanded him. Chu Luiwei was clearly deliberately provoking a fight. There were still many contestants around, as well as the forces behind them. Wasn't Chu Luiwei making things difficult for him by saying this? Elder Qiushi, I think you seem to have overlooked something. The place we're going to is the Tianling God Realm. That's the place where the Taizu of the Tianling dynasty passed away. It's sacred and honorable. Not to mention me, even the others wouldn't dare to use any dirty tricks there. Are you suspecting that there's a problem with the Tianling God Realm or the Taizu? The corners of Chu Luiwei's lips curled up slightly as if he was talking about an ordinary matter. However, Elder Qiushi's heart shook violently, and the wrinkles on his old face also trembled. He couldn't bear this accusation. You don't talk nonsense. When did I mean that? Chu Luiwei looked at him with a half-smile. Only then did Elder Qiushi realize that he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. After all, he did say that he suspected Chu Luiwei just now. He originally just wanted to vent his anger, but he didn't expect Chu Luiwei to be so sharp-tongued. At the side, Elder Duanmu Chun couldn't stand it anymore and finally spoke up. Chu Luiwei, Elder Qiushi didn't mean that. He's just shocked that you got first place. Don't take it to heart. With that, he took a step forward and shouted in a deep voice. I announce. The person who got first place in this Wanzheng competition is Chu Luiwei. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 5:34. His deep voice was full of vigor, and it instantly reverberated throughout the entire square. It landed clearly in everyone's ears. Chu Luiwei smiled and didn't harp on Elder Qiushi's mistake. She looked up at the black jade board floating in midair. There was only one name left on it. Chu Luiwei. The competition has ended. Everyone can go back and rest today. Tomorrow morning, all the major sects in Xiling City will send people to wait for everyone in Xenli Garden. Those who haven't decided which sect to join can go back and think about it today. The corresponding rewards will also be given out tomorrow. Elder Duanmu Chun's words made many people react. That's right. There's such a thing. Before the competition started, it was said that those who participated in the Wanzheng competition had the right to choose a sect. Now that the competition had ended, it was indeed their turn. The square quickly became noisy as people started to guess which sect these people would choose. Especially those with the best rankings, they would definitely be the targets of all the major sections. The few elders then kept the teleportation array. Chu Luiwei took a look and retracted her gaze. The changes in the Tianling God realm obviously didn't attract their attention. Little Zhou, let's go too. Chu Luiwei said and walked down the stage. Chang Wanzhou followed behind obediently. Everyone was stunned when they saw this scene. What's going on? Why do the first and second place seem to have a good relationship? Previously, when Chu Luiwei left with Chang Wanzhou, it didn't attract much attention. But now that everyone's attention was on them, it was very surprising. These two didn't seem to know each other before. Why are they suddenly so close? And it seems like Chang Wanzhou listens to Chu Luiwei very much? Doesn't this mean that the two of them will choose the same sect? I wonder which sect is so lucky to get these two top geniuses at once. Hey, didn't you guys realize that the two of them seem to have broken through in the Tianling God realm? Seems like it's true. Chang Wanzhou was a rank 6 warrior. Chu Luiwei also broke through to the 4th order. Everyone else who went in came out with serious injuries, but not only were these two not injured, they even made a breakthrough. Comparisons are odious. Chu Luiwei and Chang Wanzhou heard the discussions around them clearly, but they didn't take it to heart. Chu Luiwei felt a familiar gaze land on her, and she looked up. It was Jian Fengqi. Why was he here? Ever since Jian Fengqi sent her to Mu Mansion, it was as if he had disappeared without a trace. Chu Luiwei didn't need to think to know what he was going to do. It was really strange that he would come here. Jian Fengqi waved the bone fan in his hand at Chu Luiwei and smiled proudly. Chu Luiwei thought for a moment, then walked towards him. Greetings, young Master Jian. Chu Luiwei bowed politely. Jian Fengqi turned his wrist and waved the bone fan lightly, stopping Chu Liuyue's movement. Now that Miss Chu has taken first place in the Wanzheng competition, I should be the one bowing to Miss Chu. Yuan Jinghong secretly curled his lips when he heard this from behind. Miss Chu? He was so polite now, and there was no trace of the pride he had when he called her girl earlier. As long as he was in front of a girl, Jian Fengqi would always put on airs. Chu Luyue blinked. What do you mean, young Master Jian? Jian Fengqi's lips curled into a sinister smile. Shiling City opened a bet for this Wanzheng competition, and I bet on you to be first. Chu Luyue immediately understood. No wonder Jian Fengqi was in such a good mood today and even came here specially. She must have helped him win a huge sum of money. Chu Luyue also smiled, her eyes curved. Young Master Jian is too polite. You even came here specially to support me. I've never valued money, and you've helped me a lot before, so I only want 1/10 of it. If you give me more, I won't take it. Jian Fengqi's smile froze on his face. What? Chu Luyue asked in confusion. Young Master Jian specially came here to tell me this good news, isn't it to split the money with me? Jian Fengqi wanted to bite off his own tongue. This girl is doing it on purpose. She's clearly extorting me. Actually, Jian Fengqi couldn't continue halfway through his sentence. There were so many people around them watching. Although he liked money, he couldn't disregard his dignity as the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain. Countless gazes converged on him, like a small mountain pressing down on him. Chu Luyue, who was opposite him, smiled as if teasing him. Young Master Jian, with your status, you definitely wouldn't come here empty-handed to express your gratitude, right? Jian Fengqi felt his heart bleeding. With great difficulty, he gritted his teeth and said, Why would I? If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have one. It's only right that I share it with you. Chu Liyue's smile was especially pure and sincere. Then Luyu will accept deferentially. Thank you very much, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Thank you. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come. In a moment of happiness, he actually forgot what a ruthless person this girl was. Yuan Jinghong, who was watching from the side, was dumbfounded. From the initial shock to the final heartfelt admiration. If it weren't for Jian Fengqi's strong killing intent, he would have given Chu Luyue a thumbs up. Amazing! Shiling's tyrant, Jian Fengqi, was arrogant, domineering, and unbridled. He had always been the one bullying others. When had others ever squeezed him dry? Chu Luyue actually took away so much money from him. It was simply unbelievable. He now seemed to understand why Chu Luyue was able to get first place in the Wanzheng competition. She was amazing. Chu Luyue glanced at Yuan Jinghong. And, as expected, he was still as stupid as before. This look of admiration was really familiar. Oh, right, when she dealt with Jian Fengqi in the past, Yuan Jinghong would always look at her with this kind of gaze. She really didn't know how that cunning old fox Yuan Wei could have such a son. Sensing that Chu Luyue was looking at him, Yuan Jinghong actually felt a little nervous and hurriedly introduced himself. Hello, Miss Chu. I'm Yuan Jinghong. Chu Luyue smiled politely. Greetings, young Master Yuan. Seeing that she was about to bow, Yuan Jinghong hurriedly stopped her. You can't. Since Jian Fengqi didn't accept her bow, he didn't have the guts to do so. Chu Luyue raised her eyebrows slightly, but she didn't insist. Yuan Jinghong chuckled, revealing his big white teeth. Miss Chu, I really admire you. As he spoke, he moved closer and lowered his voice. Actually, if I didn't take the initiative to ask this time, this kid actually planned to hide you. Miss Chu, I've known him since we were young, but this is the first time I've seen him so concerned about a girl. Chu Luyue slowly raised her eyebrows. There seemed to be something wrong with it. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 5:35. Yuan Jinghong seemed to have misunderstood something. Young Master Yuan, Chu Luyue was about to explain when she heard a voice from the side. Ms. Chu. Chu Luiyue turned around and saw that it was Duan Ziyu. During the competition, Duan Ziyu had been waiting here and didn't leave at all. After the results were out, he was shocked for a long time and came later. I'm here to bring you back. Yuan Jinghong was stunned. Duan Ziyu? Why are you here? Duan Ziyu was Mu Qinghe's confidant. They had met many times and naturally knew each other. He's here to bring Chu Luiyue back? Back where? Duan Ziyu said calmly. Of course, I'm waiting for you. As he spoke, he looked at Chu Luiyue again. Lieutenant is in the residence now. If he knows that you got first place, he'll be very happy. Chu Luiyue thought to herself that Mu Qinghe wouldn't be happy or unhappy because of this. He had always been reserved and rarely wasted time and energy on unrelated people or things. Even if he cared, it should be because this result involved a deeper problem. Even though she hadn't gotten to the bottom of it yet, Mu Qinghe clearly knew some inside information. But she obviously wouldn't say this out loud. She just smiled faintly. Luckily, I didn't disappoint him. Chu Luiyue then bade farewell to Jian Fengqi and Duan Ziyu. Just as she turned around, before she could leave, Yuan Jinghong shouted. Wait! Chu Luiyue looked back. Young Master Yuan, is there anything else? Yuan Jinghong looked at her calm and composed expression and felt that something was wrong. Why you want to follow Duan Ziyu back to the Mu residence? Why Yuan Fengqi? Yuan Jinghong cried out in pain and looked at Jian Fengqi angrily. He was speaking up for me. Why did he start a fight? Jian Fengqi couldn't be bothered to look at his stupid face. He couldn't help but regret bringing him along. There's nothing else. You guys can leave first. Jian Fengqi said and turned to leave. Yuan Jinghong quickly followed. What's wrong with you? Why did Chu Luiyue leave with Duan Ziyu? He was Mu Qinghe's man. Isn't this the same as openly snatching someone from you? Jian Fengqi said lazily, first, she's not one of my people. Secondly, she can go wherever she wants. It has nothing to do with me. Yuan Jinghong was heartbroken. Mu Qinghe has always been at odds with you. Now that she's bullying you, you don't care at all? Jian Fengqi stared at him. What are you doing? Yuan Jinghong was a little nervous. Jian Fengqi let out a long sigh and walked forward. What was wrong with him? Why was he friends with Yuan Jinghong? Yuan Jinghong looked at the two of them hesitantly. In the end, he still followed Jian Fengqi. What did you mean just now? Make yourself clear. In fact, Chu Luiyue and Jian Fengqi didn't take this matter to heart. But they didn't know that this scene was seen by everyone else. Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe were fighting again? And it was because of a woman? West Hill was going to be lively. At this time, Chu Luiyue had no idea what kind of rumors would spread. She took Chang Wanzhou and followed Duan Ziyu back to the Mu residence. But in her heart, she was thinking about something else. She couldn't stay in the Mu residence anymore. Staying in the Mu residence had its benefits. At the very least, it was very safe. In West Hill City, almost no one would be bold enough to break into the Mu residence. But it was very inconvenient for her to stay in the Mu residence. If it were ordinary cultivation and medicine refinement, it would be fine. But there were too many things to do. If she continued to stay in the Mu residence, there would be too many concerns. She had to find another place. Fortunately, she had a lot of money now, so she had a lot of choices. Tianling Palace. Clear Wind Palace. This was the residence of the Tianling dynasty's emperor, Shangguanyu. Since he fell into a coma more than a year ago, he had been recuperating here. Clear Wind Palace was heavily guarded. Now, only the third princess, Shangguanwan, could enter and leave this place freely. As for the others, even the royal family, if they wanted to enter this place, they had to go through strict checks. In other words, they had to get Shangguanwan's personal order. At this time, night was about to fall. A tall figure walked out of Clear Wind Palace. The light from the lanterns that had just been lit shone on his face. It was an elegant and handsome face. It was Jiang Yuqing. It was already early winter. Perhaps it was because of the cold at night, but his face looked a little cold. Sun Qi, who was waiting outside the palace, quickly went up to him. Eldest young master. When Jiang Yuqing saw his strange expression, he asked, Why? What's wrong? Sun Qi paused for a moment and said softly, "Eldest young master, the Wanzheng competition is over." Jiang Yuqing frowned slightly. So sudden? He thought it would take another 2 or 3 days. Today, he came to visit the emperor and stayed inside for a long time. He didn't expect this to happen as soon as he came out. Sun Qi explained, "Yes. The last few people came out almost one after another, and the winner was quickly decided." Jiang Yuqing asked, "What's the result?" Sun Qi wanted to say something but hesitated. Jiang Yuqing frowned even more. Sun Qi bent down and said softly, "Chu Liwei got first place." Jiang Yuqing was stunned for a moment before he subconsciously said, "How is that possible?" As soon as he said that, he knew that his words were meaningless. Sun Qi couldn't be lying. Chu Liwei really defeated all the competitors and became first place. "Her Yuan meridian is clearly," Jiang Yuqing muttered softly, but he quickly swallowed the rest of his words. But the doubts in his heart were even stronger. It shouldn't be. Chu Liu's talent was not bad, but she only had an intermediate Daijing Yuan meridian. She was the worst among the remaining people. Everyone else could be first, but she was the least likely. "But, does the third princess know about this?" he asked. Sun Qi said, "She should know." The competition ended in the afternoon. He had been waiting here for Jiang Yuqing for a long time. There was no reason that the third princess didn't know. Jiang Yuqing thought about it and agreed. Shengguan Wan was very concerned about this matter. Although she didn't leave the palace, she had already sent people in private. She should know about what happened in Xuanji Square. Jiang Yuqing tidied up his clothes and walked forward. Sun Qi followed behind silently. The two of them quickly left Qingfeng Hall. However, he didn't walk far before a palace maid walked towards him. Seeing that palace maid, Jiang Yuqing's eyes flashed with a trace of gloominess. The palace maid walked directly in front of Jiang Yuqing and curtsied, "Prince consort, the third princess invites you." Although it was invite, it was obviously impossible to refuse. Jiang Yuqing said, "Lead the way." "Yes. Prince consort, please." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 5:36. When Jiang Yuqing arrived at Huayang Palace, Shengguan Wan was waiting for him. "Yuqing, you're here." Once Shengguan Wan saw him, she immediately walked forward happily and planned to directly lean into his embrace. Jiang Yuqing silently took a step back. "Greetings, third princess." Shengguan Wan missed him and pouted unhappily. "What are you doing?" Jiang Yuqing said, "My marriage hasn't been finalized yet. The princess and I are not yet married, so we shouldn't meet in private at this time. Everything still needs to follow the etiquette of the palace." Shengguan Wan chuckled and reached out to pull his arm. "Yuqing, this is Huayang Palace and there are no outsiders. You don't have to do this. Besides, even if I want to do something, will anyone dare to stop me? Now that the entire palace is under my control, what do I have to be afraid of?" This time, Jiang Yuqing didn't push her hand away and only glanced at the palace maid beside her. "Chani, you can leave first," Shengguan Wan said. That palace maid lowered her head and left respectfully. Jiang Yuqing held Shengguan Wan's wrist. "Let's talk inside. Sun Qi, guard outside." Sun Qi hurriedly bowed. Jiang Yuqing brought Shengguan Wan into the room and carefully checked all the doors and windows. Shengguan Wan found it very funny and nonchalantly said, "Yuqing, you're too cautious. Are you suspecting that my Huayang Palace isn't safe enough?" After confirming that there were no abnormalities around, Jiang Yuqing turned around, sat down on the chair, and patiently said, "It's always right to be more careful. I'm doing all this for you." When Shengguan Wan heard this, her expression indeed became much better as she intimately leaned over. However, Jiang Yuqing didn't have such thoughts. "I went to see His Majesty today. His Majesty still doesn't seem to show any signs of waking up. None of the methods he used seemed to work." At the mention of this, Shengguan Wan lost interest. She sat down beside him and snorted. "Who asked you to be so ruthless back then? Now all we can do is wait." After all, there were only a few trustworthy celestial physicians. Jiang Yuqing's eyes flashed with coldness. Back then, he had asked Sheng Guanwan to handle this matter. She had not done a good job, but now she was pushing all the blame onto him. But there was no point in arguing with her now. Besides, they had more important things to discuss. Let's not talk about this anymore. Are you looking for me so late at night because of the Wanzheng competition? Jiang Yuqing went straight to the point. Sheng Guanwan's eyes lit up instantly. Her face was full of excitement and joy. That's right. Sun Qi should have already told you about the news from the Wanzheng competition, right? That Chu something who won first place, Chu Luiyue, Jiang Yuqing continued. That's the name. I heard that it's a girl in her teens. I think it was Mu Qinghe who brought her back, right? Jiang Yuqing glanced at her and felt unhappy for some reason. However, he didn't show it on his face. He nodded and said, she's only a stage 3 warrior now. It's indeed quite surprising that she could win first place. However, what? Yuqing, don't you know that she has already broken through to become a stage 4 warrior? Sheng Guanwan interrupted him. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. The smile on Sheng Guanwan's face became more secretive and excited. And she broke through in the Tianling God realm. What do you think this means? It means that she's very compatible with the Tianling God realm. Jiang Yuqing frowned. But her Yuan meridian is only at the intermediate level. It can't be compared to those higher level ones. How can it not be compared? Sheng Guanwan stood up, and her face was filled with unconcealable excitement and ecstasy. She's at the intermediate level of the Daijing Yuan meridian, but she performed better than the higher level ones. This shows that her Yuan meridian, it's still too early to say this. We have to take it step by step. Only then can we be safe, right? Jiang Yuqing didn't want to hear what she was going to say next, so he suddenly said, before His Majesty wakes up, we can't act rashly. Sheng Guanwan was stunned. She sized him up a few times, and her eyes were filled with suspicion. Yuqing, what's wrong with you today? I just feel that everything is progressing too smoothly, so I'm very happy. Aren't you happy for me? Jiang Yuqing gently said, why would I be? Haven't I waited with you for so long? This matter concerns your future, so of course, I care about it the most. Sheng Guanwan knitted her brows slightly. But you look as if, my heart aches when I think of how much you'll have to suffer in the future. Jiang Yuqing stood up, held her hand, and hugged her. Sheng Guanwan grumbled. But I can't wait anymore. For the past year, I've been living in fear every day, afraid that someone will discover that my Yuan meridian is damaged. I've become a cripple. If I don't recover before the imperial court, everything will be over. Compared to losing everything, what's this bit of suffering? Jiang Yuqing gently patted her back. Don't worry. It'll definitely be fine. Let's take it step by step. I guarantee that there won't be any problems, okay? If we alert the enemy now, all our efforts will go to waste, right? Sheng Guanwan gradually calmed down and looked up at him. Then what do you think we should do? Jiang Yuqing smiled. Naturally, we'll follow the previous plan. Tomorrow at Xenli Garden, all the major sects will send people, and the contestants will also be there. After you go, you just need to sit there quietly and do what you should do as the third princess. After all, as long as we keep them in Wiling, we won't have to worry about them suddenly disappearing. Sheng Guanwan was quickly convinced by Jiang Yuqing. All right then. I also want to see what those people are like, especially that Chu Luiyue? Jiang Yuqing nodded in agreement, but a trace of darkness flashed past his eyes. Mu Manor. Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou followed Duan Ziyu to the front hall. Mu Qinghe was sitting there with his eyes closed. It was rare for him to be free. When he heard movement, he opened his eyes. Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou bowed. Mu Qinghe's gaze moved between her and Chang Wanzhou. After a while, he spoke. I haven't congratulated the two of you for getting the best results in the Wanzheng competition. Chu Luiyue was naturally humble again. Then she mentioned that she wanted to move out. Mu Qinghe looked at her. But did the people from Mu Manor not serve you well? Duan Ziyu immediately broke out in cold sweat. Chu Luiyue shook her head and explained, The people from Mu Manor treat me and little Zhou very well. I'm also very grateful that Vice Admiral Mu has been helping me so much. But since I'm already in Weiling, I can't stay in Mu Manor forever. I'm already very sorry for disturbing you during this period of time. So, I think it's better to move out and find another place to live. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 537. Chu Liuyue's tone was sincere, her expression was serious, and her eyes were filled with determination. Mu Qinghe glanced at her and knew that she was serious. He tapped the table with his finger. You don't have any relatives or friends in West Hill, and you don't even know many people. Isn't it convenient to live in the Mu residence? Moreover, with the Mu residence's support, you can save a lot of trouble. Chu Liue quickly said, Vice Admiral Mu, I just feel that as an outsider living here with a small boat, I'm causing trouble for you. Although the Mu residence is not an aristocratic family, it's more than enough to support the two of you. At this point, Mu Qinghe looked at Chu Liue meaningfully. Chu Liue coughed awkwardly. He was still brooding over the 90,000 white crystal coins that she had spent. Lu Yu appreciates Vice Admiral Mu's kindness. I owe Vice Admiral Mu enough, and I really don't want to continue disturbing you. Although Chu Liuyue's words were tactful, everyone present could tell that she would not change her mind. Mu Qinghe lowered his eyes and fell into deep thought. Chu Liue also quieted down and waited for his reply. The entire hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. After a while, Mu Qinghe stood up. Since you've already thought it through, I won't stop you. But the moment you leave the Mu residence, all the benefits will be taken back. He took 2 steps and paused. I'll leave you 10,000 white crystal coins for you to use during this period of time. Chu Liue was very surprised. She didn't expect that Mu Qinghe would be willing to help her even when she was about to leave. She quickly said, Thank you for your kindness, Vice Admiral Mu. But I can't accept this money. Mu Qinghe looked at her suspiciously. With her previous spending speed, 10,000 white crystal coins wouldn't even be enough to support her for a few days. She actually didn't want it? Were they planning to fight the northwest wind? Chu Liue understood what he meant, and her eyes curved. Don't worry, young Master Jian bet on me winning first place and won quite a bit of money. He has already agreed to share a portion of it with me. Therefore, I can still hold on for a long time. Mu Qinghe's face turned cold for a moment, but it quickly disappeared. He didn't say anything and left. Chu Liue looked at his back and frowned slightly. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that Mu Qinghe seemed a little unhappy. However, this thought only flashed through his mind. Mu Qinghe was too busy with his own affairs. How could he care about such a small matter as where she lived? She looked at Duan Ziyu. It's getting late today. Xiao Zhou and I will stay here for the last night. I'll leave tomorrow. What else could Duan Ziyu say? The deputy general made it clear that he didn't want her to find another place to live. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said those words. However, Chu Liue refused so straightforwardly. She didn't know if she really didn't understand or if she pretended not to understand. Please go ahead. After Duan Ziyu finished speaking, he also left. Chu Liue returned to the small courtyard with Chang Wanzhou. You've been working hard for the past few days. Have a good rest today. You still have to go to Exenli Garden tomorrow. Chu Liue said and walked towards her room. When she was about to enter the door, Chang Wanzhou, who was standing behind her, suddenly said, He must have offended you. Chu Liue looked back at him in surprise. Xiao Zhou, what did you say? Chang Wanzhou stared at her. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so guilty towards you. The expression on Chu Liuyue's face froze for a moment. After a moment, the corners of her lips curled up slightly as if she was smiling. However, her eyes were cold and bitter, and it disappeared in an instant. You're wrong. That's not towards me. Besides, it's not guilt. With that, she turned around and entered the room. Chang Wanzhou stood there for a long time. He had always been very sensitive to people's emotions. But why did she say that? Am I really wrong? After pondering for a long time, Chang Wanzhou couldn't come to a conclusion. He simply put it aside and returned to his room. The night passed without a word. The next morning, after Chu Luiyue woke up and packed up, she wanted to say goodbye to Mu Qinghe. However, Duan Ziyu said that he had already left the residence, so she left with Chang Wanzhou. Although the Wanzheng competition had ended, Shilin City was still very lively. The two of them were recognized by many people as they walked on the streets. It couldn't be helped. The two of them were too special in terms of appearance and temperament. They could be recognized at a glance in the crowd. However, these people only looked at them, but no one dared to take the initiative to approach them. Wherever the two of them passed, the crowd sensibly made way. As they got closer and closer to Exanli Garden, the number of people around them decreased. When they reached the end of the street, Chu Luiyue immediately saw that there were already black cavalry on guard. The lineup this time was clearly much more powerful than before. It was obvious that the people who were coming today were of high status. Chu Luiyue thought for a moment and walked forward with Chang Wanzhou. The people guarding the entrance of Exanli Garden were replaced by two royal elders. Chu Luiyue was more certain of her prediction. She walked forward without batting an eyelid. The two elders recognized Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou, but they still checked them carefully before letting them in. A person who looked like a page boy walked forward. "The two of you, please follow me." Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou nodded and followed. Chu Luiyue asked, "May I know where we're going?" The page boy said, "Thousand View Garden." Chu Luiyue was stunned, and her footsteps slowed. Chang Wanzhou glanced at her. However, Chu Luiyue quickly recovered. It was actually Thousand View Garden. The purple-gold Bodhi leaf is in that direction. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice suddenly sounded. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 538. In Thousand View Garden? Are you sure? Chu Luiyue asked in her heart. I'm sure. The legendary three-eyed eagle sounded very certain. If we get closer, I'll be able to accurately guess its location. Chu Luiyue continued walking forward calmly with a slight frown. She had been very concerned about Thousand View Garden in the past, but she had never noticed anything strange after so many years. When did the purplish gold Buddha leaf appear there? Under the lead of the page boy, they walked through a winding corridor and passed by a rippling lake before finally arriving at Thousand View Garden. Through the simple and elegant moon-shaped gate, Chu Luiyue could see that there were already many people in the courtyard. Please, the page boy stopped outside the gate. There was a strict hierarchy inside, and the security was tight. He was only responsible for leading them here, but he wasn't qualified to enter. Thank you. Chu Luiyue looked at the familiar scene before her, and her heart stirred. She couldn't be more familiar with every brick, stone, grass, and tree here. She exhaled softly, straightened her back, and walked in with a smile. The moment she walked in, the originally noisy courtyard quietened down instantly. Everyone looked over with different expressions on their faces. Chu Luiyue quickly scanned the surroundings and immediately recognized many familiar faces. Even Yang Qin, and the rest, who were severely injured previously, were here today. After all, it involved which sect they could enter in the future, so naturally, no one dared to slack off. She didn't see any people from the various sects, so she guessed that they should be in the hall inside. And this place was obviously left for the young participants who participated in the Wanzheng competition. The atmosphere in the courtyard became a little strange. The participant with the lowest cultivation level had become the champion, which made the others somewhat unconvinced. However, they had all been to the Tianling God realm and had seen the situation inside. They were very clear that Chu Luiyue definitely didn't win by luck. This made them even more upset. She was only 14 years old. Those who could participate in the Wanzheng competition were all geniuses with the Daijing Yuan Meridian. They were definitely the cream of the crop no matter where they were. This match had undoubtedly dealt a heavy blow to their confidence. Then he looked at Chu Luiyue with mixed feelings. Chu Luiyue completely ignored all of this and did not take it to heart at all. She casually found a spot and casually looked at the surrounding scenery. There was just the right amount of novelty in her eyes, but she was also very restrained and polite. No one could find any fault with her. So, you really don't want to get up? Suddenly, a sharp female voice came from not far away. The entire courtyard fell silent for a moment. Chu Lue followed everyone's gaze and saw two women arguing. The one who spoke was a woman in a purple dress. She looked to be in her early 20s and had an arrogant look on her face. Standing in front of her was a young girl who still had some baby fat on her face. She looked to be only 15 or 16 years old. She wore a green dress with a silver cauldron tattooed on her left chest. This was a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion. Her round face was flushed red, and her fists were clenched tightly. She looked like she was trying her best to endure it. "Miss, this was originally my position." The purple-clothed woman mocked. "Your spot? Is your name written on this spot?" The round-faced woman said word by word. "This is indeed a spot prepared for a disciple of the Chongshu Pavilion. If you don't believe me, we can ask someone to see if that's the case." The purple-clothed woman raised her hand and put it to her ear. "What? Who did you say it was prepared for? The Chongshu Pavilion? That sect still exists? I thought it was disbanded a long time ago." The round-faced woman immediately widened her eyes and said angrily, "Miss, please be careful with your words." The purple-clothed woman glanced at her. "Who do you think you are? How dare you order me around?" The round-faced woman was clearly not good with words. She trembled in anger at the woman's arrogance, but she could not think of any rebuttal. "Don't you dare insult my sect. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite." The purple-clothed woman covered her chest and mocked. I'm so scared. The remnants of the Chongshu Pavilion are threatening me." A burst of laughter came from the crowd. A young man standing beside the purple-clothed woman took a step forward and said to the round-faced woman, "Miss, I'm sorry. My junior sister has always been willful. If her words offend you, please don't take it to heart. This is her first time in Thousand View Garden, so it's inevitable that she's curious. Why don't you give this spot to her?" Chu Lue noticed that there were 9 stars tattooed on the left side of his chest, forming a line. He was clearly a disciple of the 9-Star Alliance. The round-faced woman took a deep breath and said word by word, "The seats here are specially arranged for the disciples of the 4 major sections. They don't belong to you. Moreover, there are so many people sitting here. Why did you choose me?" None of the people from the other 3 major sects dared to provoke them from the beginning to the end. They were here for her on purpose. The young man sneered with a hint of contempt. "Why is that? I believe everyone is very clear about it, right? I spoke politely to you just now because I wanted to leave some face for both of us. But since you don't know what's good for you, don't blame me for speaking rudely." The man pointed to the seat behind the round-faced woman and said, "Based on the current strength of the Chongshu Pavilion, do you have the right to sit here?" Everyone didn't say it on the surface, but in reality, everyone knew that the current Chongsu cabinet was just an empty shell. This is Xiling, where strength is respected. Since you don't have the strength, you deserve to be squeezed down by others. The purple-clothed woman beside him also had a smug expression. "Senior brother, there's no need to talk so much nonsense when dealing with people who don't have the strength but still have the cheek to occupy a seat. Just let them know how powerful we are." The 9-Star Alliance had long surpassed the Chongshu Pavilion. Naturally, this seat should be theirs. The round-faced woman felt as if her chest was blocked by something. She felt so uncomfortable that all the blood in her body seemed to be boiling. She was clamoring for a fight. However, her last shred of rationality still firmly nailed her to the ground. Before they came, the second elder had said that this Wanzheng competition was of great importance and that they must not cause trouble. Moreover, their Chongshu Pavilion was at the center of the storm and could easily be targeted. If they made a mistake, it would very likely lead to great trouble. That was why she had been restraining herself. But these people actually humiliated her sect. That purple-clothed woman wasn't even an official disciple of the 9-Star Alliance. How dare they be so arrogant? They were bullying their Chongshu Pavilion. The man raised 3 fingers. "I'll count to 3. Immediately give this seat to my junior sister. Otherwise what?" A clear and bright female voice suddenly sounded. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 539. The few of them turned around and saw that it was a beautiful woman dressed in red. It was Chu Luiyue. She had a smile on her face as if she was just asking casually. However, everyone could see that this dispute was just disciples fighting for a seat on the surface. In fact, it was the 9-Star Alliance challenging the position of the 4 major sects in the Chongshu Pavilion. Whoever interfered at this time would be involved in this dispute. Why did Chu Luiyue suddenly care about this all of a sudden? When the young man saw that it was Chu Luiyue, he restrained his arrogance. It was rumored that she had an extraordinary relationship with Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe. No matter which one of them it was, they were not people he could provoke. The ferocious expression on his face stiffened into a smile. "Miss Chu, what do you mean?" Chu Luiyue asked with a smile. "Ah, don't misunderstand. I'm just a little curious. Since this seat belongs to someone else, why are you fighting for it?" Chu Luiyue's words were too straightforward, causing the man to choke. "If I didn't remember wrongly, this lady seems to be someone your Jiaoxing alliance brought over from outside Heaven's canopy. She shouldn't have entered your sect yet. Why are you calling each other senior brother and junior sister?" This time, the purple-clothed woman's expression turned ugly. Wasn't he scolding her in public? Chu Luiyue looked at the round-faced woman and asked with a smile. "I just heard that only the official disciples of the 4 major sects can sit in this seat, right?" The round-faced woman didn't expect Chu Luiyue to suddenly help and nodded in a daze. "That's right. These 4 major sects are the top existences in West Hill. They are Dragon Teeth Mountain, Soaring Cloud Sect, Purple Shao Sword Sect, and our Chongshu Pavilion. When we came in just now, the servant had already said that this seat was reserved for us. Although it was called a seat, it was actually a status." Chu Luiyue nodded and looked at the 2 people from the 9-Star Alliance. "Since this seat is reserved for the 4 major sects, may I ask the 9-Star Alliance?" The 2 immediately became embarrassed. Wasn't Chu Luiyue asking the obvious? It's precisely because they're not now and want to replace Chong Su cabinet that they're doing this on purpose. What were they supposed to say when she asked that? The purple-clothed woman was unconvinced. Chongshu Pavilion is no longer the Chongshu Pavilion of the past. Let's talk about her. His ranking in the Wanzheng competition was below mine. Just based on this point alone, she has no right to sit here. Chu Luiyue asked. "What's your rank?" The woman in purple raised her chin. 35. Chu Luiyue looked at the round-faced woman. "What about you?" The round-faced woman lowered her head in embarrassment. 41. Actually, the difference between the 2 of them wasn't that big. Furthermore, this round-faced woman was considered young among these people. It was already considered good that she could obtain this rank. The purple-clothed woman sneered. "Although I've only been to West Hill for a short while, I know that there's a rule in West Hill. Strength is respected. Now that my ranking is higher than hers and I'm stronger than her, why can't I sit here?" The round-faced woman's face flushed red. Her lips trembled, and tears welled up in her eyes. It was all because she was useless. If she had performed better in the Wanzheng competition, she wouldn't have been humiliated like this and implicated the reputation of her entire sect. "What about me?" Chu Luiyue said. The purple-clothed woman was suddenly stunned. "What?" Chu Luiyue smiled. "I'm first. Am I more qualified to sit here than you?" The purple-clothed woman seemed to be choked by something and stuttered. "Beeb, you're not interested in this seat at all. Why are you deliberately making things difficult for us? Whether I'm interested or not is my business. You just have to answer my question." Chu Luiyue looked at her indifferently. "You," the purple-clothed woman was enraged, and her voice became sharp and piercing. "Chu Luiyue, are you determined to stand up for Chongshu Pavilion today? You have to think carefully. You're going against the entire 9-Star Alliance." Chu Luiyue smiled. "Isn't it just a seat? Do you have to make it sound so serious? But if you really want to put it that way, then you can say it's true." His nonchalant attitude made the woman even angrier. On impulse, she took a step forward and was immediately stopped by the man beside her. Junior sister. Chu Luiwei alone wasn't scary, but she had Jian Fengqi and Mu Qinghe behind her. Now, the entire West Hill was rumored to be very fond of Chu Luiwei. No matter which one Chu Luiwei chose, her status and power in the future couldn't be underestimated. If they went against her, wouldn't they be looking for trouble for themselves? Senior brother. The woman was angry, but when she met the man's warning gaze, she finally swallowed the rest of her words and turned her head away unwillingly. The man said, "Since Miss Chu wants this seat, then we won't fight with you. Miss Chu, please." With that, he pulled the purple-clothed woman to the other side. The round-faced woman looked at Chu Luiwei gratefully and hesitantly. Chu Luiwei looked at the round-faced woman, and the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. "You can continue to sit in this seat. But this is I'm not interested in this. I just don't like them. Don't take it to heart." Chu Luiwei patted her shoulder lightly. The round-faced woman looked at her in a daze. So, from the beginning to the end, Chu Luiwei really did it to help her? Ever since the incident at the Chongshu Pavilion, the people in the pavilion had been looked down on and ridiculed, and there were countless people who hit them when they were down. This was the first time that someone stood on their side in public and spoke up for them. And this person was Chu Luiwei, who they didn't know. Thank you. The round-faced woman was a little helpless. "I don't know how to thank you." Chu Luiwei asked, "What's your name? How old are you?" The round-faced woman answered honestly. "My name is Yi Ranran. I'll be 14 in a month." Chu Luiwei was a little surprised. This woman looked to be 15 or 16 years old, but she was a few months younger than her. As if she could see Chu Luiwei's meaning, the round-faced woman's cheeks turned slightly red. "I eat a lot, so I look stronger than ordinary women." Chu Luiwei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She's clearly still a half-grown child. How badly does Chongsu Cabinet need people to send her out? It's okay. You're very talented. As long as you cultivate well, you'll be very powerful in the future. Chu Luiwei said seriously. Yi Ranran's eyes lit up. Pavilion Master said so too, but I always thought he was coaxing me, she said a little embarrassedly. Chu Luiwei sighed softly in her heart. It's true. Also, remember to return the favor if you're bullied in the future. Yi Ranran nodded vigorously. Just as he was about to ask more questions, he heard a voice. The sect master of the Purple Shao Sword sect has arrived. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 540. Everyone was shocked. The Purple Shao Sword sect had a high status, and they thought it would be an elder. Why was it the sect master? Amidst the commotion, a burly middle-aged man walked over. It was the Purple Shao Sword sect's sect master, Song Luan. Immediately after, the leaders of the other major sects also appeared in front of everyone. Dragon Teeth Mountain's master, Jian Shai. Sky Soaring Clan's sect master, Cheng Lifen. Chongshu Pavilion's pavilion master, Yuqi Song. The top figures of the four major sects were all gathered here. After that, the leaders of the other sects that were ranked below the four major sects also appeared. The courtyard had already quietened down. Everyone secretly looked at each other. Clearly, they didn't expect that there would be such a big lineup today. Instantly, many people became nervous. These were all rumored top-notch experts. Regardless of status or personal strength, there was no doubt that they were the most powerful existences in Xiling and even the entire Tianling dynasty. Usually, it was very rare to see even one of them, but they actually appeared together this time. Chairs were already prepared in the courtyard. There were 4 on both sides and 2 at the front. The 8 of them sat down one after another, and there was a distance between them and Chu Liuyue's group. Chu Liuyue's gaze landed on the 2 empty chairs. To be able to sit in those seats, the 3rd princess has arrived. The prince consort has arrived. A sharp voice rang out. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately looked up. He saw a young lady in an exquisite and gorgeous palace dress walking over. She had a fluttering hairstyle and a phoenix gold buyao in her hair. When she walked over leisurely, the buyao swayed gently. There was a faint and graceful smile on her face, and the makeup on her body made her look even more noble. Chu Liwei looked at the extremely familiar face, and his fingers trembled slightly. Shangguan. More than a year had passed, but she didn't seem to have changed much. It was as if everything that happened in the past didn't leave any traces. No, she still changed. Chu Liu's gaze swept over Shangguan's body inch by inch. In the past, Shangguan, because of the lowly status of her birth mother, did not have a good life in the palace. Therefore, she always had an eager and flattering smile on her face. She was as weak as a dodder flower swaying in the wind without anyone to rely on. Anyone who saw her watery and deceptive eyes would feel pity for her. Even if he did something wrong, it was always hard to be mercilessly punished. Chu Liuei sneered inwardly. Among them, this included her former self. At that time, she was born with the Tianjing Yuan meridian. Since she was young, she had everything that others desired. At first, she didn't feel it. Later, Shangguan always showed envy in front of her, intentionally or unintentionally. She gradually thought that Shangguan was very pitiful. Not to mention that she often helped her, many times she was particularly soft-hearted. It was this unnecessary and useless sympathy that caused her to lose her life. Looking at the current Shangguan, she was arrogant and in high spirits. Her eyes were filled with the arrogance and murderous fierceness of a person in a superior position. She didn't look like the past at all. She must have lived a very comfortable life in power for more than a year. That was why she became like this, right? Half a step behind her, there was a young man. Jianghu. He was wearing a blue brocade robe with a white jade belt around his waist, outlining his tall figure. He didn't have any extra accessories on his body, but at a glance, he had a noble aura. Anyone who saw him would guess that this person's identity was extraordinary. Today, he didn't wear a mask, revealing his original appearance. He had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and he was handsome. To be called the most handsome man in West Hill, he did have some capital. Different from Jian Fengqi, that kind of romantic person, Jiang Yuqing had a pair of affectionate eyes. When he stared at a person, it was easy to have an affectionate expression. This made people misunderstand that he had a rare gentleness. It was this pair of eyes that deceived her and pushed her to death. Looking at it now, under that thin layer of floating light, how cold and vicious was it? At that time, she was really bewitched. That was why she was bullied to that extent by these two people. Chu Liuei clenched her fists so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. A handsome and enchanting face suddenly appeared in her mind. Chu Liuei's heart stirred. It was Rong Xiu. Somehow, the anger and resentment in Chu Liuei's heart gradually calmed down. It was as if there was an invisible hand gently comforting her. Chu Liuei opened her eyes, and a trace of nostalgia flashed across her heart. Only then did she realize that she missed Rong Xiu so much. If only he was here now. Chu Liuei thought silently and looked up at Jiang Yuqing. Looking at his face now, it was much more ordinary. His nose was not high enough, his eyes were not deep enough, and the shape of his lips was not good enough. The aura he exuded was worlds apart from that of his. When Chu Liuei first saw Rong Xiu, she knew that he was a rare immortal-like figure in this world. But now that there was a comparison, this feeling became even stronger. She really understood what it meant by the difference between clouds and mud. Thinking of this, Chu Liuei's mood suddenly became much better. Not to mention other things, at least she beat Shangguan in one thing. She had Rong Xiu. Somewhere thousands of miles away. The sky was blue, and the water was rippling. A huge island was suspended in midair. The rich force condensed into a white mist and drifted in all directions. A tall and straight white figure was walking on the waves. Suddenly, he stopped and gently placed his hand on his heart. "Your Highness, what's wrong?" Yan Qing asked behind him. Rong Xiu lowered his eyes, his eyelashes trembling slightly, and then his thin lips curled up. "Little heartless girl, you finally remembered me." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. The leader of the Nine-Star Alliance, Jianghu, sneered. Old song, is there no one else in the Chongshu Pavilion? How could they send such a little girl here? She can't even support her own pavilion and needs others to help her. Don't you think it's a little inappropriate for her to forcibly occupy a seat like this? Yuchi Song glanced at him indifferently. It's still better than some people who don't know their place and offend their superiors. Jianghua choked. Their Nine-Star Alliance's status was indeed inferior to the Chongshu Pavilion. Even though the Chongshu Pavilion was about to collapse, they still had some confidence since they hadn't taken down the title of one of the 4 major sections. He was so angry that he laughed and turned the ring in his hand. Old Song's words aren't without reason. It's my Nine-Star Alliance's disciple who offended you. I wonder if Old Song has heard of this saying? If one's virtue doesn't match his position, there will be disaster. The air at the scene seemed to have frozen. Wasn't saying this in front of Yuchi Song's face equivalent to scolding him? This was no longer a test but a naked provocation. To need the help of a little girl who's inexperienced. Has the Chongshu Pavilion fallen to this extent? Zhang Hua said with a sneer. Chu Luiwei raised his brows slightly. In the past, Zhang Hua could be said to be extremely fawning over Yuchi Song and was extremely attentive. Once, in order to ask for a pill, he personally went to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, because Yuchi Song was still recuperating in seclusion, he didn't get anyone to inform him and waited outside for half a month. In the end, it was only when Yuchi Song went out and saw Zhang Hua that he knew that he was there. Because of this, from then on, Yuchi Song had always treated Zhang Hua very well and almost treated him as his own junior. The Nine-Star Alliance and the Chongshu Pavilion were also very friendly and close. I didn't expect Chongsu Cabinet to suffer such a huge blow. The first one who couldn't take it was Jiaoxing Alliance. Yuchi Song remained motionless in all directions. A just cause enjoys abundant support, while an unjust cause finds little support. What does it have to do with me if no one is willing to help the Nine-Star Alliance? Although things were different now, as long as he was the pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion, he would never let anyone bully his disciple. You? Zhang Hua was furious. Yuchi Song had already looked at Chu Luiwei. The distance between them was a little far, and Chu Luiwei was standing at the back of the crowd, so it was not easy to find him. However, Yuchi Song still saw her at a glance. Wei Chi Song was slightly taken aback at first glance. This woman's face seems familiar. Where have I seen her before? Chu Luiwei met Yuchi Song's gaze and nodded slightly. A thought flashed through Yuchi Song's mind. That's right. I've seen this woman once at 100 Herbs Building. At that time, most of his attention was on the seal, so he didn't pay much attention to his surroundings. However, because that woman was generous and rich, he paid more attention to her. He didn't expect that when they met again today, she would take the initiative to help. Now that the Chongshu Pavilion's position was in danger, the people in Xiling City were avoiding them. No one was willing to have anything to do with them. This Chu Luiwei, she should know about this. However, she was still willing to step in. It was indeed puzzling. Shangguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing were not with these people previously, so they did not see the conflict between the two sides. However, before they came, their subordinates had already reported the situation to them. Therefore, Shangguan Wan looked calm, but her heart was filled with curiosity. As she searched the crowd, she smiled faintly and said, "Seniors, thank you for coming here today. I'm really flattered that you've taken the time to come here today. I'm really flattered. Your time and energy are very precious, so I won't waste any more time. Why don't we begin?" These words could be considered as giving them a way out, and they all nodded in agreement. Shangguan Wan nodded at Chan Yi, who was standing beside her. Chan Yi took a few steps forward. Her shoulders were straight, and her hands were crossed on her abdomen. Although she was wearing the clothes of a palace maid, she looked very dignified. Everyone looked at her aura and quietened down. She looked around and raised her voice. "The top 10 of the Wanzheng competition, please come forward." More and more people walked out from the crowd and stood in the middle, lining up in order. Shang Guanwan sat up straight. Who is Chu Luiwei who got first place? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 542. It's here. Chu Luiwei muttered in her heart. After her rebirth, this scene had played out countless times in her dreams. Every time she thought about it, she vaguely felt that the flames in the Imperial Ancestral Hall that day still burned fiercely in her heart, wanting to completely burn her to ashes. The bright morning sun shone down gently, and a gentle breeze blew. The air was still filled with the familiar fragrance of herbs. Everything was as clear as yesterday. Now, she was Shang Guanyu, and also Chu Luiwei. She had returned after so many hardships. She wondered how these old friends would react when they met again. Everything around her seemed to become blurry at this moment. Only the two people in front of her became incomparably clear. It even made her eyes hurt a little. Chu Luiwei took a step forward. Chu Luiwei from country Yaochen greets the third princess. Shang Guanwan looked over curiously. The woman stood in the middle. She was dressed in red, and her figure was slender and exquisite. Her black hair cascaded down like a waterfall. She lowered her head slightly, so one couldn't see her full face. However, one could already tell that she was a rare beauty. Raise your head, Shang Guanwan said. Chu Luiwei's eyes flickered slightly, and she slowly raised her head. The young girl had an oval face. Her fair and clear skin seemed to glow under the sunlight. Her black eyebrows were like falling crow feathers. Her nose bridge was delicate, and her cherry lips were slightly curved. Especially her pair of black jade-like eyes. They were bright and seemed to contain the stars in the sky. She was peerlessly beautiful and had a heavenly fragrance. That was what she was talking about. Shang Guanwan was stunned. The Tianling dynasty had never lacked beauties. Moreover, Shang Guanwan's appearance was also very outstanding. However, after this woman appeared, everything around her seemed to be overshadowed. She naturally attracted everyone's attention. Shang Guanwan felt a little uncomfortable, but what made her feel even more uncomfortable was that this face, for some reason, looked a little familiar. Jianghu was sitting next to Shang Guanwan. He could clearly see Chu Luiwei's face. Although he had seen it before, the impact seemed to be greater now that he was facing it head-on at such a close distance. The fingers in his sleeves moved slightly, but he didn't say anything. I heard that you're only 14 years old this year? His talent and strength were truly outstanding. Shang Guanwan suppressed the waves in her heart and said with a smile. Although it was a compliment, his tone still sounded high and mighty, as if he was commenting on something condescendingly. Chu Luiwei didn't think much of it and smiled. Thank you for your praise, third princess. When she smiled, her eyebrows and eyes curved like the melting ice in early spring. She was sweet and lively, and there was a hint of nobility in her eyes. Even though the person sitting in front of him was the current ruler of the Tianling dynasty, he was still able to deal with him with ease and composure. Shang Guanwan's heart skipped a beat. He almost stood up from his chair. Those eyes and brows. The smile. It was clearly, Jianghu suddenly coughed. Shang Guanwan immediately came to her senses, but her eyes were still fixed on Chu Luiwei. For a moment, she almost wanted to rush over and tear that face apart to see if there was another face hidden underneath. The few big shots around them all noticed that something was wrong with Shang Guanwan and looked over. Shang Guanwan immediately adjusted her expression, relaxed her body, and leaned back in her chair. But only she knew that her hands and her sleeves were clenched tightly, and her nails were deeply embedded in her palms. Since you defeated the others, it proves that you have the strength. In the Tianling dynasty, strength has always been respected. You are worthy of this praise. Shang Guanwan barely moved the corners of her mouth. And, when I saw you, I felt as if I had seen you somewhere before. Your appearance is somewhat similar to an old friend. These words explained her loss of composure just now. At that moment, she almost thought that Shang Guanyu had turned into a malicious spirit and came to seek revenge on her. Yuchi Song and the others were stunned for a moment, and they couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue again. After a moment, a few people's expressions changed slightly. At first, they didn't feel it, but after Shang Guanwan said that, they could all see it. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows and expression were somewhat similar to the princess in the past. It was fine when she didn't move or smile, but when she smiled, Chu Luiyue's smile deepened. Similar? Of course. Shang Guanyu's soul was in this body. She had deliberately tested it just now, and it almost scared Shang Guanyu out of her wits. She clearly saw that Shang Guanyu's entire face was distorted at that moment. Vice Admiral Mu and young Master Jian said the same thing before. Chu Luiyue pretended not to notice Shang Guanyu's abnormality. She retracted the expression in her eyes and smiled faintly. When she smiled, they didn't look alike anymore. Shang Guanwan's wildly beating heart gradually calmed down. Illusion? It should be an illusion. There are many people in this world who look alike. It should be a coincidence. However, she still couldn't help but glance at Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing gave her a comforting look and used his force to transmit his voice. I've already sent someone to investigate this Chu Luiyue's identity. There's no problem with her identity. Shang Guanwan then felt more at ease. Jiang Yuqing must have felt that they were similar, which was why he sent someone to investigate. She had always trusted his ability. Since he said that there was no problem, then there definitely wasn't a problem. Thinking about it carefully, it made sense. Shang Guanyu back then, with the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, she couldn't be more dead. Why would she come back? However, her back was still covered in cold sweat. When the breeze blew past, her entire body turned cold. Actually, we don't look that alike. Shang Guanwan seemed to have collapsed, and she was much more tired. Chu Luiyue raised his brows slightly and asked softly, "Third princess, are you all right?" "Third princess, is there something wrong?" Shang Guanyu forced a smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. After pausing for a moment, she said, "Actually, I won't hide it from you. You're a little similar to my elder sister, who has already passed away. When I suddenly saw you, I thought of my elder sister. I can't help but feel sad." As she spoke, Shang Guanwan's eyes were filled with tears. It seemed like she was really sad because of this. Jiang Yuqing lightly patted her shoulder. "Well, she has always doted on you the most. If she saw you so sad, she definitely wouldn't be happy." Shang Guanwan wiped away her tears. "Yuqing, thank you. I just miss my elder sister too much." She took a deep breath and seemed to be trying her best to keep all these emotions away. "I'm sorry for making a fool of myself." Everyone expressed their understanding. Could the third princess's elder sister be the rumored princess? Who else can it be other than her? Back then, she was the true supreme existence of the Tianling dynasty. Impossible. Isn't there still the current emperor above her? Can the princess surpass him? You don't know this. That person was born with the Tianjing Yuan Meridian, and she was destined to be the princess. Rumors say that she has a high chance of becoming the person to inherit Taizu's legacy. Thus, even the emperor would often let the princess make decisions. It's a pity that in the end, Chu Luiyue acted like she didn't hear those discussions. She smiled and said, "If the third princess's elder sister is here and knows that you miss her so much, she will definitely be very comforted. She will often accompany you and protect you." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 543. Chu Luiyue's casual words successfully made Shang Guanwan's emotions, which she had just calmed down with much difficulty, flare up again. However, she couldn't flare up in front of so many people. Moreover, to those people, Chu Luiyue's words weren't wrong at all. Shang Guanwan could only swallow her anger and force a smile, but her face was a little pale. Jiang Yuqing knew that if he didn't say anything, things would get out of hand, so he immediately changed the topic. "I believe everyone is clear about the purpose of inviting everyone here today. Chu Luiyue, you're from outside the heavens canopy. According to the rules, you can join any sect here. Have you thought about it?" Yuchi Song and the others looked over. The people waiting on the other side were even more curious. Which sect would Chu Luiyue choose? She had the best results here. No matter if it was her talent or strength, there was nothing to say. She should be able to choose any of these sects, right? Who wouldn't want such a genius? I don't think so. She spoke up for the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion just now. Isn't that making it clear that she's going against the Nine-Star Alliance? Look at the way the Nine-Star Alliance's leader looks at Chu Luiyue. He's not very nice. You don't know? Chu Luiyue even offended the people from the Lingyun sect before. Elder Qiushi hates her a lot. She definitely won't go to the Lingyun sect. It seems like she even offended the people from the Purple Shao Sword sect and the Xianfeng Hall in the Tianling God realm. As they spoke, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. How did Chu Luiyue offend so many people? How did she do it in just a few days? In that case, Dragon Teeth Mountain is the only one left among the 4 major sects. Oh right, didn't Jian Fengqi like her? She should choose Dragon Teeth Mountain, right? Chu Luiyue didn't care about what those people were saying at first, but soon, she felt a substantial gaze land on her. She looked up. The mountain lord of Dragon Teeth Mountain, Jian Shai, was looking at her with bright eyes. Curiosity, excitement, joy, relief, kindness. Chu Luiyue's mouth twitched. Why did she feel that Jian Shai was looking at her as if he was looking at his daughter-in-law? Did he misunderstand something? Jian Shai could be considered to be the most elegant and handsome among these big shots. Jian Fengqi's face, which attracted countless admirers, came from his biological father, Jian Shai. The father and son had the same icy eyes and the same chiseled face. However, unlike the playboy Jian Fengqi, Jian Shai was famous for being a romantic. Back then, he had ignored his father's objections and insisted on marrying an extremely ordinary woman. Although outsiders didn't think highly of them, their relationship as husband and wife had always been very good. They had been loving each other for decades. To this day, he hadn't even taken in a concubine. This was part of the reason why Jian Fengqi could be so arrogant. In the entire Dragon Teeth Mountain, he was the only young master. How could he not pamper him? Jian Shai looked at Chu Luiyue from head to toe. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. He almost slammed the table and shouted, "My son really takes after me. He has good taste. Look at this appearance, look at this temperament, look at this talent." No matter how he looked, he was satisfied. He and his wife had been deeply in love for their entire lives. Somehow, they had given birth to a playboy. Because of this, he and his wife had a headache. More than once, they felt that this son was useless. Which family's good son would sleep in Spring Breeze house every day, surrounded by a circle of women? Because of this, he had taught Jian Fengqi a lot of lessons, but it was useless. Recently, there was a rumor in Xiling City that Jian Fengqi had spent a lot of money on a woman. At first, he thought that Jian Fengqi was just being playful again. However, when he heard about the amount of money Jian Fengqi had bet, he suddenly felt that he was sincere. Later on, he heard that on the day of the Wanzheng competition, Jian Fengqi had specially gone to Xuanji Square to congratulate Chu Luiyue in person. This was equivalent to irrefutable evidence. Therefore, he didn't come here today to choose a disciple. He came here to see what kind of woman the legendary Chu Luiyue was like. Once he saw her, he was overjoyed. This Chu Luiyue might have an ordinary background, but why would he care about this? Moreover, Chu Luiyue's temperament was also very good. Those who didn't know her would think that she was a noble lady carefully raised by some aristocratic family in Xiling City. His son had finally chosen the right person for once. Chu Luiyue was frightened by Jian Shai's exceptionally passionate gaze. If I really go to Dragon Teeth Mountain, I'll be stared at like this every day. The moment she thought of that scene, she felt uncomfortable. Therefore, Chu Luiyue made a decision. I choose Chongshu Pavilion. As soon as she finished speaking, the noisy crowd immediately disappeared. The surroundings were silent as if everything had stopped. Yuchi-song widened his eyes slightly. Because things had happened too unexpectedly, he didn't even have time to be shocked. He was only filled with confusion and confusion. Just now, did Chu Luiyue say, "Choose Chongshu Pavilion"? How can that be? Jian Shai was the first to object. Absolutely not. How can my daughter-in-law go to another place? Lu Yu, you should come to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Chu Liuyue's eyes froze for a moment. Is Jian Shai openly snatching me? And why is he calling me by my name? This should be the first time we've met, right? No matter what, Jian Shai is a reputable figure in West Hill. Is this really appropriate? Yu Qisong immediately said, Jian Shai, what do you mean by this? Jian Shai cupped his fists and bowed to Yu Qisong. Elder Song, I've offended you. I don't mean to offend you. It's just that because of my son, I really think Chu Luiyue is very pleasing to the eye. So, why don't you give her to Dragon Teeth Mountain? Don't worry, I definitely won't fight with you for the others. Many people secretly curled their lips. He wants to snatch the best one now. The rest are not as good as Chu Luiyue. Doesn't that mean he doesn't have to snatch her anymore? Yu Qisong stroked his beard. We should let her decide for herself. As he spoke, he also looked at Chu Luiyue. Lu Yu, I'm very happy that you want to come to Chongshu Pavilion and welcome you. However, Jian Shai wants to invite you to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Since he's spoken, I won't forcefully stop him. Think about it yourself. Which one do you want to go to? Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion had always had a good relationship. Moreover, he could tell that Jian Shai really wanted Chu Luiyue to go to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken so directly. From his own point of view, of course, he wanted Chu Luiyue to come to Chongshu Pavilion. After the previous incident, Chongshu Pavilion was now in short supply. They urgently needed to nurture a group of outstanding disciples to continue. On the other hand, Dragon Teeth Mountain's status and resources were better. For Chu Luiyue, it was a better choice. Chu Luiyue curtsied and said firmly, Thank you for your kindness, Mountain Master, but Lu Yu has made up his mind. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 544. Jian Shai still refused to give up. Lu Yu, you should think about it again, Chu Luiyue smiled. Lu Yu doesn't deserve the Hill Master's kindness. Please don't make things difficult for Lu Yu. Jian Shai saw her serious expression and knew that it was useless to say anything else. He could only sigh. Alright, since you insist on choosing the Chongshu Pavilion, then... As he spoke, his expression suddenly froze. He had already invited Chu Luiyue to Dragon Teeth Mountain so enthusiastically and sincerely. Anyone would know which choice was better for their future development. However, she still rejected him so straightforwardly. Could it be that there was another reason? Could it be that his son had hurt the girl's heart? Jian Shai's mind raced. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. It must be so. Chu Luiyue only saw Jian Shai's expression change rapidly. Finally, he said hatefully, This brat. Let's see how I'll deal with him when we get back. Chu Liuyue's eyelids twitched. Was he talking about Jian Fengqi? Jian Shai seemed to have really misunderstood. However, this was obviously not a good time to explain this. Chu Luiyue thought about it and decided to wait for an opportunity to explain the situation in private. Thank you for your understanding, Hill Master. After saying that, she bowed to Yu Qisong. Lu Yu greets the pavilion master. Yu Qisong looked at the woman who bowed respectfully in front of him. His emotions were in turmoil, and for a moment he felt as if he was choking. He didn't have much hope in coming here today. Everyone thought that the Chongshu Pavilion's luck was over. These young people came to West Hill despite the hardships to fight for a future. Anyone with a little ambition would not choose the Chongshu Pavilion. However, Chu Luiyue made a choice without hesitation. Okay. Get up quickly. Yu Qisong got up and walked over. He personally helped Chu Luiyue up. His originally haggard appearance was now much more spirited. Don't worry, Chongshu Pavilion will treat you well in the future. Wei Qisong enunciated each word solemnly. Chu Luiyue nodded slightly. Thank you, Pavilion Master. She knew that Yu Qisong was a man of his words, and she also knew that he treated her very well. This had always been the case from the past until now. Other than Jian Shai, who was full of regret. Everyone else's attitude towards this matter was basically the same. First, it was shock, then curiosity, and finally, some people felt sorry for him while others mocked him. But no matter what, Chu Luiyue had already made his choice, and the outcome was set. Jianghu looked at Chu Luiyue with a slight frown. It turned out that Chu Luiyue had already planned to speak up for the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion. However, he could not figure out why Chu Luiyue would do such a thing.
Next.
Where's Chang Wanzhou? Chang Wanzhou stood up. Many gazes landed on him, including Song Wan and the others. This golden-haired youth had an unruly aura all over his body. However, unlike the controversial Chu Luiyue, he had already reached a stage 6 warrior. This was a strength that could be seen with the naked eye. Everyone might question Chu Luiyue's first place, but absolutely no one would question Chang Wanzhou's second place. He was indeed the top existence among these geniuses. More importantly, he was like an unpolished jade that had not been polished. With a little guidance, he would definitely blossom with an even more brilliant and dazzling light. The major sects present were actually a little restless. They looked at Chang Wanzhou with a friendlier expression than when they looked at Chu Luiyue. Jianghu asked, "You can also choose these, Chongshu Pavilion." Chang Wanzhou spoke without hesitation. Jianghu instinctively asked. Chang Wanzhou pointed at Chu Luiyue. She chose Chongshu Pavilion. I'm the same as her. Chu Luiyue blinked. Actually, she did not discuss this matter with Chang Wanzhou previously because she felt that he would choose with her. As expected, this child looks very obedient most of the time. You also want to choose Chongshu Pavilion? Are you sure? The one who spoke this time was Lingyun sect's chief, Cheng Lifeng. He originally thought highly of Chang Wanzhou, but who would have thought that this kid would choose with Chu Luiyue? Chang Wanzhou frowned slightly. He had already said it very clearly. Why were these people still asking? I'm sure. As he spoke, he had already walked directly towards Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue ruffled his hair. I knew that you're very clingy. Chang Wanzhou's soft golden hair was messed up again, but this time, he was not as angry as before. Ever since Chu Luiyue protected him in the Tianling God realm and called him Little Zhou, it seemed that it was very difficult for him to be angry with her. And during this period of time, he knew that Chu Luiyue was mostly just joking with him. In fact, she really treated him well. Then, it was actually somewhat acceptable for her to ruffle his hair. When everyone saw how close the two of them were, how could they not guess why Chang Wanzhou chose like this? He clearly chose Chongshu Pavilion for Chu Luiyue's sake. If Chu Luiyue chose another sect, he would obviously choose as well. These two clearly came from different places. How did their relationship become so good in just a few days? Cheng Lifeng snorted. I originally thought that you were a good seedling, but I didn't expect that a man like you would be led by the nose by a girl. This is really... I don't want you. Such a person would probably not have any future prospects. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned cold. Before she could speak, Chang Wanzhou looked at Cheng Lifeng and said coldly, I didn't choose you. It's clear that I didn't choose you, so why do you say that you don't want me? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 545. Cheng Lifeng's face immediately turned red. Unable to back down, he could only point at Chang Wanzhou. You're so uneducated. Is this how your parents taught you to talk back to your elders? Chang Wanzhou looked at him coldly. I don't have parents. From the moment he could remember, he had been alone. He ate wild grass and slept in the wild. Not only did he have to avoid the attacks of wild beasts, but he also had to compete with them for survival resources. In his mind, there was no concept of parents at all. Cheng Lifeng was choked again. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. How dare you? Chang Wanzhou frowned. He had only said a few words of truth. Why was this person so angry and agitated? Chu Luiyue gently pulled his sleeve. Chang Wanzhou turned around and glanced at her before swallowing the rest of his words. Chu Luiyue's lips curved slightly. She pulled Chang Wanzhou over, then stepped forward and said in a clear voice, "Sect Master, please forgive me. Little Zhou grew up in Nanjiang and doesn't know much about many things. If he offended you, please forgive him." Chen Lifeng reprimanded, "He's really barbaric." The smile on Chu Liyue's face did not change, but her expression was slightly cold. "Sect Master, even if he's a little unreasonable, it's not his fault. Isn't it? You're the leader of a sect and have a noble status. I don't think you'll argue with a teenager, right?" The implication was that with Cheng Lifeng's status, if he really wanted to harp on Chang Wanzhou's words, that would be really petty. Cheng Lifeng waved his sleeves fiercely and looked away. After a moment, he sneered, "He doesn't know the ways of the world. You're sharp-tongued." Chu Liyue smiled faintly. "Thank you for your praise, Sect Master." Cheng Lifeng only felt as if his internal organs were squeezed into a ball, and it was very uncomfortable. Did this Chu Liyue think that he could be arrogant and unbridled now that he had joined the Chongshu Pavilion? Chu Liyue calmly stepped back and gave Chang Wanzhou a comforting look. Anyway, she had already offended the Soaring Cloud sect. According to Elder Qiushi's personality, even if she knelt down and begged for mercy, he might not let her go. Instead, he might become even more arrogant. Since that was the case, what did she have to be afraid of? At least on the surface, Cheng Lifeng didn't dare to do anything. Yu Qisong patted Chu Liyue on the shoulder. Chu Liyue knew that he was supporting him, so he smiled at him. Everyone had different expressions when they saw this scene. Chu Liyue pretended not to see anything and quickly retreated to the back with Chang Wanzhou. The people at the back continued. Those with better rankings were basically not rejected. Moreover, many of them already had dealings with the pavilion before, so things went smoothly. At the back, some contestants who were not so outstanding were occasionally rejected. Those people could only settle for the second best. Even so, no one chose the Chongshu Pavilion. However, whether it was Yu Qisong or Chu Liyue, they didn't care much about this and simply watched. Chu Liyue stood quietly at the side, but in reality, she was discussing the purple gold Buddha leaf with the legendary three-eyed eagle. "How is it? Can you confirm the location now?" Chu Liyue asked in her mind. The legendary three-eyed eagle paused for a moment and said with certainty, "It's southeast." Southeast? Chu Liyue looked up. That was her previous music room. How come she didn't know that the purple gold Buddha leaf was hidden there? If you want a more specific location, you have to go there. The purple gold Buddha leaf's aura is basically blocked. There should be many barriers. It won't be easy to get it. Chu Liyue rubbed her forehead. It was easy to say. If it was in the past, she would have gone if she wanted to. But how could she go now? Moreover, the security here was strict. With her current status, she probably didn't even have the right to get close to the music room. After thinking about it, she could only put this matter aside and look for another opportunity. After about an hour, everyone had finished making their choices. After that, those who were ranked at the top received a universe ring containing their rewards. After Chu Liyue received it, she checked it and found that there were indeed a few good treasures. It seemed that Shangguan Wan had indeed put in a lot of effort for this Wanzheng competition. However, these things might be very precious to others, but they might not be enough for her. Especially now that she had the Dragon Abyss sword with her. Any one of the items in the sword hilt would be better than all of these. However, she still pretended to be pleasantly surprised, which attracted many envious and jealous gazes. Shangguan Wan stood up and looked around. "Congratulations, everyone. The Wanzheng competition is considered to be over. However, to all of you, your path to becoming a powerful being might have just begun. I hope that all of you can cultivate diligently in your respective sects and become a true powerful being." Everyone naturally agreed with him. "I still have things to do, so I'll take my leave first. The scenery in Exenli Garden is not bad. Feel free to do as you please." With that, she turned around and prepared to leave. "Third princess, please wait." A voice suddenly rang out. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Chu Liyue narrowed her eyes slightly. It was Yang Qin. Shangguan Wan turned around and glanced at her. "Do you still have something to say?" Yang Qin quickly stepped forward, bent her knees, and knelt straight on the ground. she said with a grave expression. Third princess, I, Yang Qin, have something to report. Shangguan had a deep impression of Yang Qin. Seeing her like this, she asked, "What's the matter?" Yang Qin paused for a moment. "This matter concerns the Tianling God realm. I wonder," Chu Liyue's eyebrows twitched. "Is she planning to do something to me? Previously, I thought that Yang Qin would definitely not let this matter rest after suffering such a huge loss. As expected, she had been quietly waiting at the side for such a long time previously. So this was what she was waiting for." Hearing that this matter concerned the Tianling God realm, Shangguan's expression immediately became serious. She pondered for a moment and said, "Come with me." However, Yang Qin didn't get up. "There are a few people involved in this matter. Who are they?" "Just say it," Shangguan ordered. Yang Qin looked up as if she had made up her mind. "Those involved in this matter are Chou Ding, Ning Jiaojiao, Chang Wanzhou, and Chu Liyue." When everyone heard this, they were all shocked. These people were all in the top 10. Seeing Yang Qin like this, the matter should be quite serious. Could it be that something happened in the Tianling God realm at the last moment? The same guess appeared in Shangguan's heart. She frowned and swept her gaze across these people. "The few of you follow me." With that, she took the lead and walked towards the small courtyard at the back. Jiang Yuqing was half a step behind her. Only then did Yang Qin get up and follow her. When she passed by Chu Liyue, she paused and said softly, "There's going to be a good show. There's going to be a good show now." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 546. Chu Liyue met her proud gaze and smiled. "Yes. I hope you can enjoy it this time." Yang Qin's smile froze. Why is Chu Liyue still so calm? She lowered her voice and said, "Be as arrogant as you want. You can be arrogant all you want. Let's see how long you can last." She didn't believe that Chu Liyue could still be so calm after everything was exposed. Chu Liyue raised her brows. "You can watch." With that, she turned around, intending to follow the two. Yuchi Song called her worriedly. Yang Qin didn't come with good intentions. It seemed like she was here for Luyu. What could it be about the Tianling God realm? Chu Liyue comforted her. "Don't worry. Little Zhou and I will be fine." Seeing the confident expression on the girl's face, Yuchi Song's heart also calmed down a little. "Be careful. I'll wait for you here." Chu Liyue nodded and left with Chang Wanzhou. Seeing this, Yang Qin couldn't make up her mind. Could it be that Chu Liyue already had a way to deal with it? "Why you still in a daze?" Ning Jiaojiao walked up and saw that Yang Qin's expression wasn't right. Didn't they already agree on this? Yang Qin glanced at Ning Jiaojiao and felt a little more at ease. "It's nothing. Let's go." In the quiet room, a faint sandalwood fragrance filled the air. This was a type of sandalwood that Shangguan loved very much. It could calm one's mind. When she was anxious or couldn't sleep at night, she only needed to light a little of this sandalwood to calm her down. But today, this sandalwood seemed to be useless. Even though the fragrance kept lingering around her nose, her anxious and depressed mood didn't calm down at all. Instead, it became more and more intense as time passed. She and Jiang Yuqing sat at the head of the table, while Chu Liyue and the others stood not far in front of them. Shangguan looked at Yang Qin sternly. "Now you can speak." Yang Qin took a deep breath. She seemed to have expended a lot of effort before she finally made up her mind. "Third princess, I would like to report Chu Liyue for using despicable means to steal the Long Yuan sword in the Tianling God realm." As soon as he finished speaking, Shangguan suddenly stood up. She was both shocked and angry. "What did you say?" Jiang Yuqing's face was also full of shock, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Long Yuan sword? Long Yuan sword? Wasn't that the artifact personally forged by Taizu of the Tianling dynasty? Yang Qin knelt down again with a thud. "Third princess." Chu Liwei came from a lowly background, but he was audacious enough to snatch the Long Yuan sword that belonged to the Tianling royal family. Such behavior deserved to be punished. Every word that this commoner said was true. I didn't lie at all. Third princess, please judge clearly. It was a simple sentence, but it was like a clap of thunder on the ground. It stirred up countless waves. Shengguan Wan's brows were tightly knitted together. No matter how bold Yang Qin was, she definitely wouldn't dare to joke about the Long Yuan sword. She stared at Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei, is what she said true? Chu Liwei's expression was calm as he said lightly. Third princess, I don't admit to a single word that Yang Qin said. Yang Qin sneered. You don't admit? Chu Liwei, do you dare to say that the person who rushed out of the crater and snatched the Long Yuan sword in the Tianling god realm wasn't you? At that time, that ball of light was too glaring. She could only vaguely see a figure inside, but she couldn't identify who it was. After she was eliminated, she heard that Chu Liwei actually came out after her and took first place. Only then did she realize that the person at that time must be Chu Liwei. Because only Chu Liwei rushed into the golden sea of fire in the crater before them. In this way, the things that happened later had a reasonable explanation. The Long Yuan sword recognized Chu Liwei as its owner, without a doubt. Chu Liwei was shocked. What exactly are you talking about? It's fine if you don't admit it. The witnesses are right here. Yang Qin looked at Chou Ding and Ning Jiaojiao. At that time, Chu Liwei fell into the crater in the Tianling god realm and disappeared. We all thought that she had already been eliminated. Apart from that, there were only the four of us near the Long Yuan sword. Chou Ding, you were also there when the Long Yuan sword awakened, right? Chou Ding nodded and said in a low voice, That's right. That's right. At that time, the Long Yuan sword had indeed started to awaken. As its surrounding aura became stronger and stronger, I couldn't take it anymore and took the initiative to leave. As for what happened after that, I really don't know. Shengguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing were deeply shocked. The Long Yuan sword awakened? The Long Yuan sword that had been asleep for thousands of years actually awakened again. And they knew nothing about it. If Yang Qin hadn't taken the initiative to speak, they would have been kept in the dark. Shengguan Wan's heart was about to explode. The awakening of the Long Yuan sword meant that it had to choose a new owner. For thousands of years, the Tianling royal family had always wanted to invite the Long Yuan sword out, but they had never succeeded. They didn't expect that the Long Yuan sword would awaken just because the Wanzheng competition was held once. Shengguan Wan really regretted it so much that her intestines turned green. Continue, she said with gritted teeth. Ning Jiaojiao curtsied and said, Third princess, after Chou Ding left, Yang Qin and I discussed going together to see who was trying to snatch the Long Yuan sword. Hence, we set off together. Unexpectedly, just as we moved, Chang Wanzhou chased after us and fought with us. At that time, both of us were very confused. We didn't have any grudges with Chang Wanzhou, so why did he suddenly rush out to stop us? Later on, we understood that it was because the person who wanted to snatch the Long Yuan sword was Chu Liwei. Shengguan Wan and Jiang Yuqing both looked at Chang Wanzhou. That's right. Everyone could tell that Chang Wanzhou and Chu Liwei were very close. It could even be said that Chang Wanzhou listened to Chu Liwei on everything. Who else could make him help other than Chu Liwei? Later on, I fought with Chang Wanzhou and was defeated not long after, so I was eliminated from the Tianling god realm. After I came out, I inadvertently saw Chu Liu's name still on the black jade board. Only then did I vaguely guess that that person was Chu Liwei. Shengguan Wan's face was gloomy. Yang Qin was relieved to see this. She guessed correctly. The Tianling god realm's Long Yuan sword was indeed the Tianling royal family's reverse scale. Whoever touched it would die. Since Chu Liwei really dared to snatch the Long Yuan sword, then he would have to bear the wrath and responsibility of the Tianling royal family. She continued. After Ning Jiaojiao was eliminated, I wanted to fight with that person, but that person sent a mythical beast to deal with me. If I didn't see wrongly, that should be the legendary mythical beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. I wasn't a match for that mythical beast and was defeated. Chang Wanzhou also chased after me. I couldn't handle it alone, so I was quickly eliminated. Chang Wanzhou stabbed me in the chest, and the wound is still there. At this point, Yang Qin's voice trembled slightly, and a trace of deep hatred flashed across her eyes. And when I left the Tianling God realm, I happened to see that person pulling out the Long Yuan sword. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.